The views and opinions expressed on Where Did the Road Go belong to the person speaking them. They do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of other people on the show or the show as a whole. This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by the following amazing individuals: Greg Ross, Billuminati, Allison Cook, Yvonne Williams, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, and Michael Frisky. Thank you all for helping to make this show possible. And if you'd like to help out, become a patron at wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month for lots of extra content.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I welcome back Mr. Jeremy Vaeni. Hello.
Oh, that's it. That's my cue.
That's
Hi,
your cue.
I'm Jeremy Vaeni.
You
Welcome
are.
Me.
Or J-Vay sometimes.
Sure. Let's stick with Jeremy.
You're the one that came up with J-Vay.
I know.
Or what was it you and Jeff, was it the Jer?
The Jer. The Jeff and the Jer. Yes.
So for people who don't know, you are still posting old episodes of Paratopia on your feed, our Undoing Radio, as well as new stuff from you, which is sometimes
that is true.
Sometimes just you, and sometimes you interviewing people.
Yeah, although for the last, I don't know how many episodes, like at least 10, I've been doing a conversation with, I don't know what you would call him, philosopher, biologist, poet, Tom Cheatham. So we've been having some pretty good dialogues, but now we're going to actually, starting in March, we're going to start doing that as a live YouTube show once a month.
Oh, nice.
And then our Undoing Radio will go back to just being me, baby. Just being me.
Okay. All right. You don't post them on YouTube and then on your podcast as well?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I will.
Cool. All right. I actually just listened to your Sea Change episode with, Ghosthorse. I forgot his first name.
Oh, Tiokasin Ghosthorse. So you're talking about, that's Paratopia.
Yeah, that's Paratopia.
But yeah, Tiokasin Ghosthorse.
Is he still around?
Yes. He's around. Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's been, 12, 13 years?
He is very much alive.
Good.
Everyone.
Good. Do you still talk to him?
Now and then.
Good.
We haven't talked in a good long while.
It's definitely an interesting perspective to bring some indigenous views into the paranormal.
Yeah. Yeah. The first thing I guess he taught me is Indians don't get abducted. He was confused by the whole alien abduction thing because they've got a completely different relationship, because they're inclusive. So even the fact of saying an alien as an other is not a concept the Lakota would have. And I think it gets confusing because then when you start talking about other beings as family, and I'm not Lakota, but so if you're a Lakota out there, feel free to correct me. I'm not trying to be like an expert here on something I don't know, but I'm pretty sure, the sense of family and connection to all beings is there for the Lakota. And when you start talking about the stars and star family, that's when like ufology and New Agers perk up and think you're talking about aliens, but they aren't necessarily talking about aliens. And they aren't. And if to the extent that they are in the way that we would understand it, it's not necessarily actually the way we think about them,
right,
as sort of necessarily people on another planet that are that we are descendants of in some ancient alien way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've had, is it Ardy Sixkiller on a couple of times talking about her books. And I mean, it seems they relate to them as the star people in a lot of the stories she would get. And there are some abduction-ish type things, but more like they were just taken on, almost like contactees. They're just kind of like taken and shown things.
Right.
Rather
and it may also differ from nation to nation, right? So he talks about the Lakota. I don't know that it would be different for someone else, because I was just reading, like, the Lakota, they have a sense of, they're not afraid of ghosts, right? Like the dead are ancestors and they're not to be feared. Whereas I was reading the Navajo it might be someone else, but I thought it was the Navajo, who do sort of fear them and distrust anything that's coming from a ghost and sort of think they're scary and evil.
Oh,
so
interesting.
there are, just like any other westernized culture, it probably depends on where you're from.
Oh, sure. And I mean, Samhain was, the night the ancestors came back and you had to appease them. So there was some level of, concern or fear that you were going to disrespect them in some way.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, like thinking of Hawaiians, their sense is that the ancestors are all around and guiding you, in the form of amakua, which again, New Agers tend to take and make like spirit animals, but it's really like animals or rocks that are sort of working on behalf of, or I don't want to say possessed by, but something actual family, that are there to protect you and guide you. But also there are these, I'm sure you've heard of night marchers, right?
Yeah.
And these either body manifestations or just balls of light that you see marching along. And, not only do they have their own sort of stories of what those things are, they've got a protocol for it. I think that's what's interesting to me. Like, we don't have a protocol for ghost hunting or when grandma comes to visit you. But like, if you see a night marcher, it's like, you take off your clothes and you lie down and you don't look at them, you don't look at them and you just wait for them to pass, they've developed a protocol. Like,
right.
To me, that's smart, but also it's just interesting. It's just interesting, like the level of acceptance of something.
Well,
and we don't have that.
What was interesting is you just talked about that, talking to somebody in Hawaii who waited out in the woods to see the night marchers. And he saw lights, and he said they kind of, assessed him, and then he went back to fishing, and then he saw them in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, but to us, that would be a UFO.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. Like, I had a friend who, she came on, Jackie came on, I think it was The Experience, which is a podcast I used to do, talking to experiencers, and she's Hawaiian, and she and her now husband were driving along, and I think it was a large fireball shot past their car, and it was like silent, and it was just that. Like, and to them, I think, that type of fireball isn't a night marcher. It's generally perceived to be a magician, right? Or some sort of, like what we would call a wizard. I don't know what the word would be
right.
for them. But like a person that knows how to transform and move around that way. But again, we would look at that and we'd be like, that's either like, if you couldn't explain that as like something from the volcano or earth lights from earthquakes, which it sounded pretty big in an actual fireball, then we would, I think, go with UFO, like aliens or something.
There was actually a clip, and I totally forgot to grab it. From 2012, because that's about where these shows are from at this point, the most recent ones you're putting up for Paratopia, where you talked about the disclosure movement, and it was so dead on to what's happening today. Like, like someone could easily be thinking you're talking about what's happening today.
Right.
And it's like, and I wanted to clip it and play it, and I guess I still could. Because of that, because, when we say this stuff has been going on forever and it doesn't go anywhere, that's a great example, because here you are commenting on it, and everything you're saying in 2012 is true in 2025.
I know. I get frustrated with that sometimes. Like, I even just, now I do, I'm off Twitter or X or whatever, and I'm on Blue Sky. And so I refuse to say skeet, but I blue skied, whatever their version of tweet is.
Right.
About this, about like, I just posted, I think it was the last week's episode of Paratopia, and I said something snarky like, hey, ufology, this wasn't supposed to be the end point. This was supposed to be the starting point. You're supposed to have taken it from here, not forgotten about it, and started over. Because that's what we keep doing, right? Like,
yes.
Like all of this, and then academics now, this is my latest old man gripe. Now that academics are sort of coming into the field, it's like they think they're reinventing the wheel, a lot of them, and they don't realize that this has all been done before. It's just been ignored,
Totally true.
Like any of the depth stuff I'm talking about, anything that's like, oh, this isn't aliens. What is this? It's like, well, we've been down this road, but nobody cared because they wanted aliens.
Well, if I can find that clip, I'll put it in the show.
What an amazing thought that there are people out in UFO land who see that the landscape is changing. and see that people are waking up to the depth of this phenomena, and they're trying like hell to keep it inside of the old 80s box of, military whistleblowers, disclosure, all of that stuff, because, well, that's an industry that you can bank on. There's a yes and a no, and there's something that you can get angry about, right? The government keeping secrets from us, and our tax dollars going into these black budget programs, blah, blah. And then there's the aliens we can get angry at because they must be working with the government, or they must be doing something shady, or all of that. And then, of course, the fact that there are aliens. So now we know what they are. Now we know that they're doing stuff behind our back, and so on and so forth. And we're going to get to the answer, and this is how we can be proactive. I mean, I think that does sum up the 80s, all of that clandestine horseshit. And so now they're at the bottom of the barrel where they're scraping, and they're like, well, let's see. We know that certain people flooded the field with disinformation to ferret out communist spies and spies from countries besides Russia who may be interested in our technology. Well, those days are over. Those real military people and CIA people and whatnot, let's say they don't exist anymore. And so now we've got to go get the delusional people. Like, see, that's what we're up to, because the Cold War is over, and that type of spying doesn't exist anymore, I guess. I don't know. But it's interesting because, we've got embedded in ufology the notion that it's being watched by people in clandestine government agencies and all this sort of shady stuff that really was happening. It turns out not for the reasons that we thought, not because ufology was necessarily important and anyone was on to some great discovery that the government needed to keep secret, but because they wanted to flesh out spies who were interested in technology, Area 51 and things like that. So we know that now, right? We know that is the reason for a good portion of those military whistleblowers in the 80s coming forward. They were fakes working on behalf of disinformation. And we want to keep that dream alive, right? And so how do you do that now? Well, then you got to trot out the delusional people and the just flat out liars. Wah, wah. But isn't it interesting? Because, like I said, I mean, if those people were in this field to work on behalf of the government for a reason other than ufology, for this ferreting out spies, then that means that didn't exist. There weren't really disinformation agents and military whistleblowers and all this stuff who were here for the reasons that ufologists thought they were. And yet now they're still trying to hang on to that thought and fill it in, fill in the gaps, color inside the lines with crazy people. That just is wrong on every level, and I hope to God someday they wake up and realize what they're doing. And it's not as though ufology is the cash cow that it used to be, and so is it really worth doing just to keep this belief system going, just to keep the fame going and all of that? I mean, well, I guess it is, there are people making money off conferences and toys and trinkets and all that stuff. So I guess you could say there is this cottage industry that they need to keep alive for money's sake, but I don't really think it's all for money's sake. I really think it's for belief system's sake. Because if you wake up and you realize all of your theories have been taken away, they've been shot down, they've been exposed to not be real, then you're left with a question. And these aren't the people who want to question. These are the people who want answers. To have an open question to them is to admit defeat, is to admit that this is not real, that ufology isn't real, and that they've been chasing their tails their entire lives. It's essentially to admit that they're delusional, that they've been chasing a delusion. But the ironic thing is they are, but there's also the real thing there, and the real thing is still a mystery. So anyway, That's all very circular because it's all very circular, isn't it?
Hey, but what did you want to say about Tiokasin?
Oh, I just thought his stuff was interesting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the last show I listened to. And so I didn't know how much, I wanted to know if you were still in contact with him and stuff like that. But one of the things you said is that, they don't see themselves as abductees. And I know you've referred to yourself as an abductee. And why do you refer to yourself as an abductee? And what does that mean to you?
I rarely do anymore. Back then, people were calling themselves experiencers and all this. And I just thought and I still think this, it doesn't really matter. So I just stuck with it because I thought that's the thing that we all know. Just like I'll still say alien, even though I no longer mean alien, but it's just the verbiage we all use.
Yeah.
So you roughly know the subject I'm talking about. But now if I say anything at all, I'll generally say experiencer, just because I do think abductee implies too much. But I'm not married to any term. If we all know kind of what we're talking about, that's good enough to me.
Okay. I was just wondering about that because you would refer to it, and I'm like, I kind of felt that that's probably why you did that, but I wasn't really sure. I figured it got into your lexicon early on, and you just kind of stayed with it.
Yeah, that's basically it. Just because I figured everyone stayed with it, but now, I think a lot of people do say experiencer, even in the mainstream, that's sort of out there. So
true.
That's fine.
So let's see. One of the things I wanted to talk
also, experiencer sounds kind of pretentious, doesn't it?
It does, unfortunately. But it's
I'm an artist.
I think it's a better description than abductee when we don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and you were talking to one of the listeners you had on about this, but the role of fear in these experiences. Because to me, for the most part, my experiences haven't scared me. The only time I generally experience fear, except for a couple of rare exceptions, have been things that were like sleep paralysis.
Right. Well, you're a sociopath, so that makes sense.
Yeah, that's it. Well, it seems like they tried to teach me early on to suppress the fear response.
Well, that's interesting because I don't know what episode, but in some episode I talk about sleeping over at Jeff's place and having this weird experience where I could sort of, I don't know, it was like a mind's eye sort of visionary thing late at night. So, you can be like, well, it's a DMT dump in your head.
Right.
But okay, of sort of seeing a spot in the spine light up and having someone explain to me that is the point of contact, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but basically that the fear is what happens when this other dimension meets our dimension, and it just comes out. It's just sort of a natural reaction to that sort of physiological contact, is this body response of fear. And I thought, that makes about as much sense as anything.
True. But I think not getting past that fear is why this stuff gets so negative with some people, whether it be ghosts or whatever. I think there's some of that co-creation going on, and kind of you're getting back what you're putting into it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Yeah, and so this goes to my wish, which is I wish we would, before we start asking what this other is, because it's always tempting, whether it's ghosts or aliens or whatever, of course we want to talk about it, right? We want to figure it out, and we demand to know. And it's like we don't know what the hell we are.
Yeah.
And I wish we would confront ourselves before we go asking about the other, because when you do that, you might just find out certain things like what you just said, which is that there seems to be an element to this, if you want to call it a relationship or whatever, where at least the surface level of what you're going to be confronted with is co-created by you. And so what you're seeing isn't necessarily what's really happening, or it doesn't need to be. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And if you could if you could deal with your own fears first, for instance, then maybe you wouldn't be bringing that to the table, and they wouldn't be coming at you that way.
And to me, it seems like a lot of this stuff is trying to help us develop internally on sort of a spiritual level. But if you're afraid of it and you keep pushing it away and you put it in a box of this is a demon or this is whatever, it's not helping you.
Yeah, and we see that in other ways, and it makes sense to us to do in other ways, like the psychedelic trip, where people say, just go with the flow. If you fight against it, it becomes sort of nightmarish and fearful and all that. But if you go with the flow, you'll get through it just fine. And on that note, going with the flow down a fast river in a canoe or a kayak, probably much the same way. If you fight the current, you're screwed. But if you go with the flow, you're okay. So why don't we bring that sense of it to this? That would be nice.
Because fear sells?
Right. The horror story cells. Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately. So anything that can be made into something, I had someone write me once that he wanted me to, he had heard I had a bunch of experiences. He wanted me to come on his television show that he was working on and tell my most scary story. And I went, I don't really have any scary stories. And he goes, could you make one scary? And I'm like, no, I can't.
Yeah, I find it odd too. There used to be, I haven't heard this in a long time, but I'm sure you have too at some point way back in the day, where you'd say like, I'm an abductee or I'm an experiencer, and the reaction would be like, well, have you gone to the police? It sounds like really freaking scary what's going on with you. If that were me, I'd be like, I'm being attacked. I would try to seek help, all that sort of nonsense. And it's like, it's an unspoken thing. And I don't even know that Jeff and I talked about it, but that this fear and this terror, it's self-contained in such a way that it's not destroying your life. Like, there may be other elements to this that destroy your life, but it's not like you fear getting up and like going to work or brushing your teeth or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's no fear of like, I'm going to leave my house and be attacked by a serial killer or a mugger or something because I know there's someone out there.
Right.
It's not like that. And it feels like on the surface it should be like that, but it doesn't, the fear doesn't work that way with this. So there is no sense of like, I don't know, I think I could be wrong, but for me at least, there's no sense of like, yeah, I need to go, I felt fear, therefore I need to like sue. Because, there's always, I'm saying that because it's ridiculous. Because, like, it's ridiculous just to say go to the police in the first place. Because, right, like, for the obvious reason of, like, who's going to help you? But that sense of helplessness is, I think it's constructed in a way that it is to get at your own, if you want to call it spiritual or mental or whatever, your own awakening, your own growth, whatever it is. If you see it that way. If not, then you're just, you're going to be scared, I guess. But I think it is that way for a reason, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, our culture definitely doesn't seem to have a paradigm that's very helpful for it.
Yeah, no, just demons.
Yeah, exactly. And again, because fear sells, that's what they're pushing for. They want that next scary story, that next Exorcist or whatever that they can turn into a movie and sell lots of books because it's a terrifying event, rather than looking at what this really is. Yeah,
it's just interesting because that take on it from the outsider of saying like, why don't you go to the police, or well, all that sort of thing is like, it's almost speaks to them finding it offensive that you're not scared in the way that they think you should be, or that they would be. I mean, there are always those people who are saying it to be snarky, like a skeptic, right?
Right.
We're like, why don't you go to the police, file a report? But then there are people who've said it to me who've meant it, And it's like, I feel like they're offended in some way because it calls attention to, I don't know, that there's something about certain types of fear that are self-involved. Like, there's legit fears that we all have, and we should be fearful in certain ways. But then there's just like fears that have to do with being self-involved and having the image of yourself be screwed with. And we don't like that. And I feel like somehow alien abductions may slip into that category for people sometimes. I don't know, it has to do with their own self-image, Because I don't even know if this is making sense, but
it is. Well, and that's the thing. A lot of this ends up with you confronting yourself.
Yeah, I think all of it does. I think it has to, by necessity, whether they're doing that on purpose or not. But I think they are doing that on purpose. But
I think so.
Either way, I think you end up there. Or you do go crazy, right? Like, what else are you going to do? Like, you've got three options. You go crazy, you deal with yourself, or you go down the rabbit hole of whatever community story that is false you enjoy.
Yeah.
And then you end up kind of delusional anyway, but validated by these other people who are also delusional.
Well, you can also, there's also the option of trying to deny it.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Do people do that?
Yeah.
Still? I guess they do.
And I think if you deny it, it tends to be less prevalent in your life. It doesn't necessarily go away. But when you engage it, it certainly becomes more active.
Right. Yeah. Which is another, I was going to say tell, but perhaps tell. That there's an accommodation going on, that it's not all boogada-boogada-boo the way we think it is. But then again, as I'm saying that, it's like also might just have to do with what we were talking about before, that you're co-creating the facade, at least, of them. And so is there in ignoring them or having a normal life and not including this stuff in your life, does it actually block them out in some real way? Because if they are coming through, not just through outer space, but inner space, then there is some sort of consent in a way. conscious or unconscious that you have to make, I guess, for them to be able to do that.
Yeah. When we're talking about like being afraid of muggers or anything like that, there was a point, and I live in a big house, and at the time it was just me. And I just laid down to go to sleep, like wasn't falling asleep or anything. I laid down and a voice in one of my ears said, "There's someone in the house." And I went, God damn it. No, there's not. But the thing is, like, the voice didn't scare me. But the idea of someone being in the house was a little scary. And I'm like, all right, let me check the cameras. No, I don't see anyone. Let me walk through the house real quick, Like, but I'm more afraid of something like that than I am of a mysterious voice whispering in my ear.
Well, here's the thing. Consider this, because I've been actually thinking about this a lot lately. Even for experiencers, do we not, like, we want normalcy. Even people who live abnormal lives or whatever your life is, when this happens, it's almost like everyone's got these bumpers to guard them from the greater ecology or the greater reality out there, right? Whether that's our culture doing that or whatever. For whatever reason, we've got them. And even experiencers who go through this want to feign some sort of normalcy. So I would say, like, if that's true, what I just said, that would be the way that you're doing that, is like to downplay the paranormal thing and focus on, oh my God, there's a prowler in the house.
Right.
And because what was I was just talking about this like yesterday. There was something. Oh, right. So even with me, just get a load of how crazy this is. So I've talked to you before on this show about having the big I am experience of seeing and being the universe exploding into existence from nothingness. Mm-hmm. And the first visual after nothingness is, I've been calling it clarity over black. What I really mean is, like, it looks like a round circle of glass or a lens or something, over black, and it expands in all directions, this circle of clearness. And when I was writing the book, I originally wanted to write that it was a ball. It wasn't a ball. It was like a two-dimensional circle, right? It was like, it looked like, that. But I thought, nah, that's so preposterous people will think that's fake, or they'll say that that's, something. Like, in this preposterous giant experience that I'm describing, I'm afraid that this one detail is going to be the preposterous thing. But more than that, it's like, to me, it doesn't make sense, because to my mind, it should be a 3D ball. So I was tempted to self-edit my own experience as I was writing it. But then I found, like, in science, before you have objects, there isn't three-dimensionality. There really would be like 2 dimensions or whatever. So then I was like, okay, I felt okay with it. But just stuff like that, where even I have to catch myself editing my own story to sort of fit a reality that I think is palatable to either my own senses or other people's senses, even though I'm talking about highly crazy stuff.
Right. And it's hard not to do, because you have your sort of consensus reality. And when something doesn't fit, it's almost like, oh, I want to tell this, but if I tell it like it is, people are going to think I'm making it up because it's too crazy.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even conscious. Like, there's that, and there's, in the sense that I think we've talked about before too, of anytime you ever watch a show where somebody's making a UFO report, and then they lean in and they say, now I'm going to tell you the really weird part, or they have to have it, cajoled out of them through an interview process where they're self-editing because they don't want to tell the really strange part because you won't believe that. Right. There's that. But then I think there's also just, like, doing that to yourself, and, like, you only see it later when you go, oh, wait a minute, how did I forget that? How did I remember that part wrong? Why did I do that? Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, why am I? So it's just interesting, because people like Jeff Kripal, for instance, who talk about this from, like, he's a religious history professor, and he talks about the story being told, or the stories being told are the important thing to sort of, one of the important things to focus on. And I think within that, you got to ask, what is the editing going on, right? Like, not just who's telling the story and what is being communicated, but who's doing the editing and why. Yeah. How does the editing affect the story? Because that's really, the editor is the biggest part of the picture here, and we rarely talk about the editor.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I found that since I noted down most of my experiences, I think because I wrote them down, a lot of them were pretty accurate. But I realized the first time I went through all that stuff, there were bits that I edited because I didn't think they made sense the way they were, and then I went back and went, oh no, I'm wrong. That didn't happen that way, and it was simply like almost like a logical like there was a experience, I don't know if I've ever told you, but we were standing at the edge of this potter's field that overlooks Seneca Lake. We had made a trail along the side of it, and so there was this heavy brush between us and the field. And this tree just starts shaking, and we're hearing loud thumping. We can feel the thumping on the ground, and I thought it was like a buck on the other side of the tree, but we couldn't see through it. But the whole fairly decent-sized tree, not like, immense tree, but like maybe 20, 30 feet high tree is shaking. And I'm with two of my friends, and one of them, they're both freaking out. And I walk down the trail and look, fully expecting to see a buck like just running its horns against the tree. And there's nothing there. And as soon as I get there, the tree stops shaking. And so my one friend's like, what was it? And I'm like, there's nothing. I don't know. And I walk back and it starts doing it again. So this time I walk all the way out into the field. And the field is clear. There's nothing there. There's not, like if it was an animal, there's nowhere the animal could have gone. And so again, I'm like, there's nothing here. So I walk back, tree starts shaking again. This is where we realize our other friend is not seeing the tree shake. And in my mind, I assumed the friend who wasn't seeing the tree shake was the friend who never experienced anything with me. But it turned out to be the guy who had tons of experiences with me, but not this one.
Huh.
So he was freaking out because my other friend's freaking out because the tree's shaking, but he doesn't see the tree shaking. And then they both insisted we leave right away.
Uh-oh, I'm hearing an echo of me. I hope that's not a problem for you.
Are there two of you?
I hope not. The echo's gone now, so okay. Maybe it heard me and left. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
So in my mind, I remembered it as, okay, my friend who never had these experiences was the one who didn't see the tree shaking, until I looked at my notes and realized it was backwards, because my mind just edited it because it made more sense that way.
Yeah. So, right. So even in this, there you go. Even in the big strange experience, it's like your mind is constantly trying to make as normal a normalcy as possible,
Yeah.
And it's funny too. Like I was thinking about, now I'm just going to rehash conversations I've already had with other people. I apologize, but
okay.
They'll be new to you. So Jeff Kripal has often talked about a friend of his, and I can't remember what it is, but basically it's a story that is basically this. Like he's never had paranormal stuff happen to him ever, but he one day, I don't know if he wakes up or comes into the house or whatever, but he finds that something that is an everyday household item, let's say a pack of matches, is like in a sealed jar in his cupboard that would have been either on the table or in another room. And so he lives alone. Like he wouldn't have done that. And he finds that, and it like blows his mind, because how did that happen?
Yeah.
And it just gets to like something so small. Like we're always looking for the big experience, and we love to hear them, right? People are tuning into your show because they want to hear the big experiences, maybe. But something like that just calls into obviousness the house of cards upon which reality is really founded, right? Like our sense of physics and how things, laws of physics and how things have to go.
Right.
That something like, if that's not a person who has like broken into his house and is gaslighting him, well, it's reality gaslighting him, or it's an invisible intelligence gaslighting him, or something. But it's something that is like calling attention to the options, the not hard and fast absolutes of reality, and in such a way that is just for him. Because if you hear the story, you've just got to believe this guy. You didn't see it. And it seems to me that a lot of this paranormal stuff, in fact, mostly all of this paranormal stuff, goes that way, where it's one or two people, it's small clusters of people, and it's something that is for them. It blows their minds, but then it's on us to believe them or not believe them.
Right.
So the guardrails of reality seeming to obey absolutes and laws is still there, despite all of the evidence through all of the ages, through all of the experiences of people, that it doesn't need to be that way, and it doesn't go that way all the time. It just is really interesting to me that something is doing this, and in our response to it apparently doesn't change or change enough where we engage it differently, because it's not there's well, much like you were talking about Paratopia in 2012 describing the disclosure stuff to a T of today, nothing's actually changed with our response to the paranormal in any way. Right? Like, it just keeps doing the same thing over because we keep responding the same way. And if it's calling attention to the unreality of reality or the unreality of absolutes, and our response is to somehow acknowledge that, but keep it fringe while the absolutes and the materialism and all this stuff stays front and center. I don't know. There's just something there that it almost begs a trickster, right? It's like you got to have a laugh at some point because even the gods would go crazy.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think approaching this stuff with at least, life in general with a sense of humor is important because I feel like the universe has a sense of humor, and you can either laugh with it or be the butt of its jokes. So those are your options.
Right.
There was something I was going to say to what you just said, and I lost it completely. I don't know.
You're editing reality right now.
Am I?
No.
Aren't we always? Either that, or
I guess we all are right now.
I was going to say, because I've asked people this question a few times now. So, based on what you just said, what do you make of larger scale experiences like, say, Fatima, or like the Mexico City UFO sightings, or things like that, where you have massive like sightings of a paranormal event?
Well, that too falls into the same category of these bumper rails that we have, which is amnesia. Like, it happens, or even Gulf Breeze. You know, my favorite UFO event, big event. Multiple things going on there, clear as day photos and video, all sorts of stuff, and then it goes away, and then it goes away. Yeah. Right? Like, but for Fatima or something like that, then it becomes it takes on sort of a almost historical connotation to it. It's of fascination to look at, but it's still not real anymore because it just has gone. Like, it's like out of sight, out of mind, you know, which makes no sense because it should be like this mind-blowing thing that just happened. But like, where is it? Were people in Fatima talking about it for years and years and years? Or I bet not. I mean, do people in Gulf Breeze ever talk about Gulf Breeze? You never hear them. Or Mexico? I mean, are they all like, hey, remember back when we used to see UFOs that one time for like days at a time? It's just bizarre.
What do you make of the whole Gulf Breeze thing? Do you think the guy that was taking the photos was faking any of them? Do you think there was legitimacy there?
I think
Ed Walters, that was his name.
Yeah, I think the overall sightings, there's legitimacy to. I mean, you know, John Maccabee talking about seeing balls of light come up out of the water and go over his van. Bruce Maccabee, who was, you know, a major investigator back then. Stuff like that. And there are other videos and things. But I think, me personally, if you're asking me, do I believe Ed Walters? At this point, I do. Because, one, the UFO that he was photographing looked exactly as fake as the thing that I saw in Vermont in 8th grade. Like, it looked that fake. If I took a photo of it, you would not believe it. But two, like, he went away. He never came back. He got divorced. His wife never came out and said, yeah, he was faking all this crap. Like, nobody in ufology ever goes away, especially the hoaxers. They always somehow make a comeback. But he actually left and hasn't been back and hasn't wanted to. So that to me speaks to his credibility. And the fact that, like, you know, what is the story? A reporter went to his old house and found the Bubba UFO
model
constructed out of his old architectural drawings because he was an architect, found this like in a crawl space in the attic or something and was like, well, I guess I decided to go to the house and I found this. And then some kid comes out and says, oh, yeah, he was faking it. He took me around and it was just models and stuff.
Yeah.
But that kid seemed sketchy. It seemed like there were people being paid off by the politicians to sort of make this go away, is what it seemed like. Now, I would love to see an interview with that kid today. Where is he? You know, there have been people who've gone and been interested in revisiting Gulf Breeze. So have they not been able to get interviews with these people or even that reporter who supposedly found, you know, the sculpture?
Right.
Where are they?
And I feel like, you know, if you're Ed Walters, you're not going to leave that stuff, even in a crawl space. You're going to destroy it.
You would think. I mean, it was a pretty sophisticated hoax. And also, I remember watching, it might have been like Inside Edition or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he had like the crew and they were like on a beach and they saw a UFO. It wasn't that same thing, but it was something else. And there it was, you know, clear as day. So, and also, I remember Jeff telling me he had seen video of, I don't know if it was metallic, but it was a small ball of some sort, like really small, like golf ball size maybe, that flies into the camera frame, hovers there, and flies out. And it is so fast. And it is that, like, you know, we're talking about in the early 90s, right?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't something that you just fake real easily. And he was impressed by it. And he had his own experiences there, by the way, that were personal to him. And he's Jeff Ritzmann. So, you know, maybe take that with a grain of Jeff Ritzmann, that it could just be him. But it all smacks of a reality to me. But again, I come back to like I remember watching Oprah, you know, where there was like 50 people or something from Gulf Breeze all swearing that they've seen this thing or something like it.
Yeah.
Again, where are they? Like, they just go, like, do they just go about their lives and like, oh, doody-doo, that happened.
Yeah,
Let's pay our taxes and go to work.
Yeah. The stress of life takes over, and that becomes a footnote. A
footnote, but you would think it's something that you would talk about like every Christmas with the family. You'd think like maybe there would even be a push to like make it the new Roswell or something. I don't know.
True.
It's bizarre that there's just like, nope. Let's clamp down. This is not who we are. This is not what we're about. Move on to the next.
Oh, I want to make a comparison to wrestling here, how people have short memories.
Yes, that's right. Every 7 years, you can redo the same plot lines.
The same plot lines, and you can turn someone face to heel just like that, and people are like, oh yeah, no, now I like them, or now I hate them. It's like,
right.
Okay. And it's not just so much like you're following along. It's like you've just forgotten all the reasons you liked or hated that person.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, this all goes into self-examination too.
Yeah.
Look at how weak we are. I was just like thinking about, now don't worry, I'm going to say Donald Trump, but I'm not going to be political, folks. If you look at Donald Trump, and what is he known for, no matter what you think of him? His look, right? He's got this crazy orangey look. And you look at evangelists. Before there was television, before TV told you who to look at, you have these evangelists in big tents who have big giant hair and big teeth, and they're overly exaggerating, talking about the Lord. And in ufology, you've got like Stephen Greer, who's just a mess of mannerisms and affectations. Let's put it that way. And I look at these people, and you remember that guy? There was that guy who used to always be on TV who had the question marks all over his jacket. And I don't even remember what he was selling, but he sold a lot of it and became a millionaire.
I don't know.
And you look at these types of things, and you go, okay.
There's the guy from Ancient Aliens with the hair.
Yes, there's Giorgio Tsoukalos' hair. So what is it that they all have in common? And Bernie Sanders, you know, he talks like this, and he looks a certain way, and he becomes popular on the left. In a big way. It's that they all make an impression. They leave a visual mark on you so that it doesn't even matter what they're talking about. You remember them. They're memorable. That's it. That's what they all have in common. Is they're freaking memorable because they're different. And so you can sit there and think you're laughing at them or agreeing with them or whatever, but let's just stick with laughing at them, or you think they're buffoons, but somehow they're getting into you. Somehow they're taking over. They're getting your money. They're doing the politics. They're doing the religion thing, whatever it is. Or yeah. Greer has been around forever, and people still take him seriously, even though his presentation is the most unserious presentation. So there's something there that we're not looking at about ourselves, about how we are easily mesmerized, let's say, just by a buffoonery, right? Even just a cartoonishness. And when I say that, like, what's the most quoted TV show you can think of? Probably The Simpsons, an actual cartoon, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's something about, like, cartoonish unreality in your face that leaves a mark, and even though you think you're not listening to them or paying attention to them, those are the people you're listening to and paying attention to.
Interesting.
So we're that weak. And we don't even know it.
Well, if you go read the book, The Invisible Gorilla, it's really going to make you think that we don't really see anything for what it is.
So that must be about in the back of the basketball game, the gorilla walks by.
That's where they started, and then they started looking at other things. So they have the whole book is about the illusions that we have about reality and how little of it we actually perceive, and how many preconceptions we have that make up what we actually think we're seeing.
Right.
And it's utterly fascinating. And the sort of confidence thing is one of those things. They'll say people will believe someone who's confident, even if they're talking nonsense, over someone who, like, questions themselves.
Yeah, and yet in poll after poll, if you talk to, you could go out on the street and poll people and be like, hey, do you like being yelled at by people? Do you tend to pay attention to people who yell at you? They'll be like, no, God, no, I hate that. Like, who the hell wants to be yelled at?
Right.
And yet that's who we pay attention to, are people who are, quote unquote, confident, but it's usually men who are yelling at you.
Right.
And trying to convince you of something. And it's like, for some reason, we think we don't want that. And yet that is exactly what we do pay attention to. So,
well, if they're yelling and confident, they must know what they're talking about.
Right. So is the point of the book that we can't know anything at all? Or is the point of the book that reality is what? Like a consensus of
the point of the book is that we should
falsehoods?
The point of the book is that we should be aware of the illusions that we have.
Right.
So like the illusion that memory is accurate, for instance, and how the brain actually distorts memories over time. The illusion of focus, like they talk about in cities where there are a lot of bicyclists, there are less accidents with cars and bicycles than on cities with fewer bicyclists. Because even if you think you're looking for them, you're really not. But when you're used to looking for bicyclists, you're more likely to actually look for them.
Huh, interesting.
And I mean, I think we've all had those times where we're driving and we think we looked both ways, and then we start to pull out and the car's coming. You're going, I just looked that way, but I don't think I processed it. It's like reading a book and realizing you've been reading the words, but you haven't processed the last page.
Right.
So we have this illusion that reality is a very stable, obvious thing, and it's not.
It's not, but yet, when we talk about it with each other, we all seem to know what we're talking about.
Sure, yeah. There's
like just what we were talking about with abductions. It's like if I say abductions, none of us I may not even I don't mean alien abductee anymore when I say I'm an alien. I'm literally saying I'm an alien abductee and meaning that I'm not. But yet we all know what I'm talking about. And we also all know when I say that, what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, it's bizarre.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they did, I mean, the book's definitely worth reading because it's very enlightening. They talk about, for instance, the way, like, there was a scientific test done, and I had forgotten all about this whole marketing thing, where playing Mozart for babies was supposed to make them smarter.
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
Yeah, it didn't.
No. So the test was a singular test that they played Mozart's for some people right before they took a test, and other people sat in silence for like 15 minutes. And the people who listened to Mozart did better on the test. Mm-hmm. When they replicated it, they found that really wasn't the case. It wasn't Mozart. But overall, the end result was that if people listened to music they enjoyed before taking a test, they tended to do better on the test.
Huh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that never got any headlines. The Mozart thing got tons of headlines. And then I want to say it's HP, started with if it helps people on tests, it must help babies. So they started putting out all these tapes to play for babies and play, when the baby's in the womb and stuff, to play Mozart to make your kids smarter, even though there was no evidence behind it and everyone believed it was true.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, I think playing Mozart for babies just makes them whiter. I'm pretty sure.
Makes them lighter?
Whiter.
Oh, whiter.
But yeah, let's go with lighter.
But yeah, I mean, they talk about how like a study will come out, and even if it's disproven, they don't tend to focus on the fact that it was disproven. Like it's interesting to the news media or whatever that this study was perhaps true. Oh, it turns out it's not true, but they don't really go through the effort of saying, hey, remember when we said Mozart makes you smart? Yeah, it doesn't. They don't do that.
Yeah, well, and same thing with hypnosis, right?
Yeah.
Like, why did Jeff and I and Emma Woods and Carol Rainey all get brought through the ringer about saying hypnosis is bad as a memory retrieval tool in 2000, whatever it was, 10 or 11, onto today, when we've known that for years? Like, it's been a known thing, but it's like, well, because it was popularized, you could say, well, it was popularized by things like the X-Files or something.
Right.
But the problem is that then when you go on to media, shows, Oprah again comes to mind, or any of the shows that are supposed to be nonfiction, they could do that research. Why didn't they do it? Why didn't they say, that's just in the X-Files, folks, but in reality, it doesn't really work? Why didn't the skeptics who go on those shows to say, like, Whitley Strieber, you're crazy. Bud Hopkins, you're crazy. Why didn't they ever just go after hypnosis as a memory retrieval tool?
Yeah,
It's bizarre, but it's like, in spite of the evidence, in spite of the facts, this fiction works for us for some reason, so we go with it.
They also talk about things like, and I'm trying to find, they actually had a whole section on hypnosis I was going to try and find, but I don't know where it is. They talk about like how subliminal messages don't work, even though this is something that most people believe. Oh, here it is. 61% of our respondents agreed that hypnosis is useful in helping witnesses accurately recall details of crimes. The idea that hypnosis can put the brain into a special state in which the powers of memory are dramatically greater than normal reflects a belief in a form of easily unlocked potential, but it's false. People under hypnosis do generate more memories than they do in a normal state, but these recollections are as likely to be false as true. Hypnosis leads them to come up with more information, but not necessarily more accurate information. In fact, it might actually be people's beliefs in the power of hypnosis that lead them to recall more things. If people believe that they should have better memory under hypnosis, they will try harder to retrieve more memories when hypnotized. Unfortunately, there's no way to know whether the memories hypnotized people retrieve are true or not, unless, of course, we know exactly what that person should be able to remember. But if we knew that, then we'd have no need to use hypnosis in the first place.
Right. And I guess the answer to that would be, well, what about, are there not experiments where you try to find your car key? Like something you lost. I lost something. Where did I lose it?
Right. Well, so I know Jenny Randalls experimented with hypnosis in the UK, where she did an experiment where there was some event in her younger life that happened that she only remembered pieces of. But there was actual documented, like the stuff was all recorded, but she hadn't seen any of it. So she was hypnotized to remember it because they would then be able to check it against the information. And she found that the stuff she remembered under normal memory, the few bits she remembered, was accurate under hypnosis, but everything else was wrong. And because they were able to go and check it, she was like, yeah, no, this is not a good memory recovery tool. However, there was a case in California where a guy was hypnotized to remember a license plate and remembered it accurately and was able to find a busload of kidnapped children because of it. Mm-hmm. So it does occasionally work, but if you don't have something to check it against, you have no idea.
Yeah, and actually that Jenny Randalls thing, that experiment has been replicated, I want to say at Stanford. Could be wrong, but it's been definitely at a university level. They've done that and shown that over and over again. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I used to know the answer to this. Maybe I need to hypnotize myself to remember it, but the thing about the car keys or the license plate, if that's more prevalent because that's a different type of memory, I don't know.
Could be.
But I think the overall answer is that yes, some people can remember some things sometimes, but it's the same. Like if you got that guy drunk and asked him to remember, he might also remember it.
Right.
So it's no better hit ratio than like getting someone drunk and asking them to tell you the truth or remember something.
It might be a worse hit ratio, really.
Well, it probably is worse because, like they said, you're trying to you're under hypnosis for a reason. So you want to remember something. So the likelihood of you trying to make something up, even just to not be embarrassed by wasting everyone's time, is pretty high. I mean, I can remember that the one time I went under hypnosis and back in college for this, of just that, being under hypnosis initially and jogging my mind, trying to come up with something, being like, no, I felt like I was confabulating images in the moment, just to please the hypnotherapist, because I went out of my way to travel there at like 5 a.m, and because it was like, her place was like 3 hours away, and who wants to waste everybody's time? Right. So, but at least I was self-aware enough to admit to myself that that's what I was doing. I don't know that everyone is as great a human being as I am, Seriah. So I don't know if they're going to do that.
And the thing too is that if you believe you've been abducted by aliens and you know all these stories, and even if you don't go to a ufologist to get hypnotized, just go to a regular psychotherapist, you may still recall abduction memories because you think that's what happened to you.
Right. Yeah.
And there's no way to prove it. There's
all kinds of good ways to fake it by accident. That's the problem.
Yeah. Right. And the people are totally genuine about it, but they don't understand how hypnosis really works. You played during the Paratopias, I guess Emma had released some newer tapes that weren't out initially with the rest of them that were seriously disturbing, where he was talking, literally saying he was leading her in the hypnosis and stuff and making it as sexual as possible, even though she was trying to resist and saying nothing sexual happened here. And it's so disturbing to listen to.
Yeah.
Knowing that she was in a suggestible state and starts out very defiant, almost saying, no, nothing happened. And he's like, well, let's pretend it did.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're gonna anyway. So let's just put it out on the table. We're pretending this happened. Okay.
The alien is now laying on top of you. And she's
Right.
like, that never happened. No, well, let's pretend. He's now laying, and it's like, wow, man.
Yeah, I mean, listening to those tapes is surreal because you listen to them, you're like, wait a minute, are there crimes being committed here? Like,
Yeah.
you just don't know. You know it's unethical, you know it's immoral, but is it a crime? I don't know. I don't think it is, but maybe it should be. But it's definitely creepy and gross.
Yes.
And a litmus test for people like, who defend him or defended him back in the day, who listened to it and were like, I don't hear anything wrong with it.
Right.
And it's like,
Right.
you must be a dude.
And the question is, was he even fully aware of how unethical his behavior was? Or
That's always been the question.
Yeah, like was he just so stuck in that mindset of this is reality, and if I have to pull it out of people, I have to pull it out of people, but people need to know.
I don't know. I think it's more like, OJ, like OJ probably killed his wife, right? Or his girlfriend or whatever it is. Probably did it. Most likely did it. All the evidence is that he did it. He knows he did it. He wrote a book. What if I did it?
Right.
But do you think at some point he convinced himself that he didn't do it? Like there's always that thing where you can convince yourself, I didn't do it. And I wonder that about Jacobs. Could he have convinced himself? Emma thinks that he knew the whole way. And I don't know. I tend to agree. I at least think he had to have known in the beginning. I go back to, I don't know if I talked about this on your show, but she sent me a page from his very first book on what it was, UFOs over America, where he's just got this dry description of a UFO event. And in his own book that he sent her, I guess he forgot he did this, but he underlined a sentence, one of these dry sentences, and wrote in the margin, who gives a beep of his own book. So and then what is his next book? It's not this dry, like that book was, I believe it was peer reviewed, because at this point it's his first book. He's a college professor. He's got to be on the, up and up.
Right.
But by his next book, he's bored with himself. He doesn't care about this stuff. It's not getting him the fame that he wants. And his next book is voila, like Secret Life or whatever, we're all going to die. The alien story, whatever it is, Suddenly hybrids are here. Suddenly all this espionage is happening. And I do think that's a conscious choice that he made.
Yeah.
Whether in the end he ends up LARPing himself into, Tom Hanks and Mazes and Monsters, I don't know. I just dated myself with that. Thank you.
Not only that, but there's another example of beliefs people had that weren't true.
Yes. What do you mean? Wait, what?
Well, the whole Dungeons and Dragons thing, the dangers of Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
How people are going to lose their mind. Like, because that all came from a kid who killed himself, and the mother decided to blame Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, that, Dungeons and Dragons may have been BS, but it is true that actors can get so involved in their role that they need therapy to come out of it.
True. True.
So, yeah, there is something, again, it gets to the fragility of the absolutes that we think reality is an absolute, probably not. We think the sense of self that we have is an absolute, absolutely not.
Yep.
But we just live like everything's okay.
All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Quick mid-show break here. I'm going to go with a recommendation, then I'm going to give you some contact info. So my recommendation for this week is a movie by the name of Caddo Lake, Caddo Lake. This is on Max at the moment, and it came out last year, I guess. I hadn't really heard of it until a thread on Reddit talking about interesting time travel movies. And there's just a short little blurb about this on IMDb. It says, when an 8-year-old girl disappears on Caddo Lake, a series of past deaths and disappearances begin to link together, altering a broken family's history. It's really good. It's really, really good. The ideas are very cool. If you like stuff that plays with your head and plays with time, then you will almost certainly enjoy this movie. And so that's my recommendation, Caddo Lake. All right, as far as contact stuff, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. You can find everything there, all our links to social media and stuff like that. And everything from Discord to our Patreon. If you want to become a patron, it's only $3 a month. That's it. You get the shows weeks early. You get them commercial free, with the exception of sometimes I will put in a commercial for something like, Tim Renner's new book or something like that, which is not so much a commercial as, it is, I guess, but it's also a favor to a friend. So you will get those in the Patreon, but you won't get the standard commercials. You also get extra content with every show, which you can also buy on iTunes, and extra special stuff in between. And if you like heavy music, I also do The Last Exit for the Lost, and you can find that at thelastexit.org. That is a very long weekly music show where I play a lot of stuff you're probably not going to hear anywhere else, including exclusive live performances. But yeah, lots of rarities and cool, interesting stuff, as well as tons of movie reviews and other stuff. So, thelastexit.org, and there's a Mixcloud for that where you can go back and listen to old shows anytime you want. All right, and now something about Tim Renner.
I Have Never Minded the Loneliness, Hermits and Their Stories, is the latest book by Timothy Renner. What compels a person to leave behind society, forsaking family, friends, and the comforts of modern life to live in solitude? The hermits of the 19th and early 20th centuries are as fascinating as they are mysterious. These enigmatic figures often became the focus of public interest, with newspaper stories turning them into local legends, folk heroes, and symbols of a life apart. In I Have Never Minded the Loneliness, you'll discover the extraordinary lives of hermits who defied convention. John Stink, rumored to have died and risen again more than once. William Woodruff, whose long vow of silence followed a broken heart. Brusher Mills, the serpent hunter who sold his own snake oil remedies. And Truman Commodore Downs, who claimed Mars as his homeland. These stories and many more reveal the complex lives of individuals who chose to live apart from the world. I Have Never Minded the Loneliness is available now at Amazon.com or wherever you buy books.
So I'm here with Jeremy Vaeni, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, well, there's a few things here. Let's see, which one should we go with? Let's go with dreams. I think the first book you ever sent me starts out with you talking about one of your dreams. And I always find people's dreams fascinating. And I feel like dreams fall into a variety of categories, and I don't know that people really recognize that. Earlier, we talked about sleep paralysis, which is almost certainly a type of dream. There's lucid dreaming, there's big dreams and small dreams, and probably a bunch of other stuff that we don't recognize for what it is. What do you think about that?
About that there are different categories of dreams? I think it's absolutely necessary that we distinguish different types of dreams, or else how are you going to know when it's not? If you... Well, and in different ways, like a lucid dream, that's something where you wake up into the dream and then you can go around and explore.
Right.
So that's very obviously different from a dream that you're just stuck in and, that's your reality until you wake up and realize you were dreaming. So there's already we already know that there's that one difference that exists. But then there comes, are there beings that are communicating something to us sometimes?
Yeah.
Versus every dream is a communication from something. I just had a conversation with an author who may listen to this, and so I apologize, but I won't mention your name, who really turned me off because he's writing books about alleged experiencers who aren't really experiencers, or, talking about just dreams that sound like normal dreams. And I had a little back and forth with him about this. And his view is that all dreams are transportations to other realities. All dream, that whole you're leaving your body thing. Okay. And I'm like, but you need discernment, because if you don't have discernment, this is my view, then how are you going to know the difference? But to him, there is no difference. It literally is all the same, and it's all fascinating. It's like, you know what? That is such lazy BS that I can't with that. That just annoys the hell out of me. And I just bought a book, actually. I just started it on Hawaiian dreaming. Oh. And again, here's something where if you're open to it in your culture, you tend to develop a system for it. And you tend to recognize things and do the things that we would call science, right? Which is just like observing and categorizing. So they have different kinds of dreams, not just like they have personal dreams that are your own unconscious. They recognize that. They recognize when an ancestor is coming to you in giving you a prophecy or giving you guidance or something. They've got all these different categories. One is lucid nightmares caused by eating goatfish. Like, that's an actual category. And they know that the way you know the difference is whether the dream is actually there to help you with something or not, So I don't know. I mean, it just seems like it's weird how our culture, why are we even talking about it? It's 2025 and we're just now in all of our civilization and wisdom and books and stuff, our knowledge, we're still creeping up on things that have been known and facts to other cultures forever.
Yeah.
But we still think we're the mature ones in the room and not the child. We think they're the children, right? And we're growing up out of them. We're evolving out of these uncivilized cultures. Well, no, it's the other way around. We're actually probably evolving back into them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We just don't know it because, like any kid in their terrible twos, we're narcissists.
Because you get the materialistic view that all dreams are just subconscious junk. And it's like, that's not true though, because I've been taught things in dreams. I've solved problems in dreams. I've had dreams I don't even know how to classify. I've been given really important information in dreams. How would that be subconscious junk? Because it's not stuff that I could have even known subconsciously.
You remember back in the 80s, I think it was the 80s, may have been early 90s, but I seem to remember being the 80s, that there were researchers who were claiming that we all dream in black and white. Nobody actually dreams in color.
Yeah.
We just think we do, but we don't.
Yeah.
Such a lie. It's such a demonstrable lie there maybe those guys did.
Right.
And therefore they thought everyone did, but it's just so bizarre how, the officialdom can make a proclamation that is against what you're living with every day of your life. And you're just supposed to go, oh, yeah, well, that guy said it, so it must be true.
And the one I love is where they say that everyone you see in a dream is someone you've met in real life.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's like, how would you know?
Right, yeah.
They state this.
Because I said it out loud, so it must be true.
Right. They state it as absolute fact with total confidence. And it's like, so you've checked every single person's dream and everyone they've ever met, and that's how you've determined this?
Well, this gets to something else, too, like the bumpers of reality. I think we have this in science, too, where instead of saying the truth, which is things change all the time as we change our perspectives because nothing's actually what we think it is.
Right.
I mean, it's just self-evident that way, but we don't do that. Instead, we go, isn't it great how science can really account for its own mistakes and can course correct? And isn't it amazing how science makes all these new discoveries and allows itself to change and to evolve with the new information? And it's like, that's not what's happening. What's happening, the story to my mind of all of these changes on every level that are constantly happening is that we don't know what's going on, but it seems to work a certain way. Things seem to work a certain way from whatever perspective we have. And when we change our perspective, they seem to work that way too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, everything is happening and nothing's happening at the same time.
Well, that's like the other thing that they'll tell us that you can't read in dreams.
Right. I've read in dreams.
So have I. And
yeah.
sometimes I can't. I totally agree. But other times I can. Sometimes it's hard, but I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't get it. But I will say that the thing that you're talking about, which was the dream that starts, if I'm to tell you this, I'm to tell you it is fiction, was fascinating to me because it was all my life. I would have these, when I would come lucid in a dream, it's just like the movie Inception. It's like all the dream characters become evil and hostile around me. And I used to wonder, is that the alien thing? Is there something in me that's like keeping me from knowing something or keeping me from seeing something? And because that same hostility I would feel during alien dreams that I wasn't sure were dreams or not. Now I'm sure they were dreams, but then I wasn't. And it's the same like smirking sort of hostile entity that would always greet me. And when I would wake up into them, right? And so in this dream that I describe in the book, I finally corner, one of these entities, and I'm like, are you me? Are you a part of me, or are you an alien? What are you? What? And it finally relented, and I thought it was going to say alien because my whole life I thought it had to be, and it said, no, I'm an aspect of you.
Yeah.
And then in the dream, it turns into my ally, and we end up, doing this whole Carlos Castaneda dream. But to me, that was a major revelation. And I don't know. I just think like, how do you look at that and go, nah, that's not important. That's just some junk going on in your head.
Right.
Like It's a big life-changing thing that just happened in my dream, but you're just going to be like, nah, That's just some stuff. Your brain chemistry goes weird for like 8 hours a day, and then it just does that.
Have you had sleep paralysis?
I'm trying to think. I don't know that I have had sleep paralysis.
No, it's kind of surprising, actually. I assumed you would have. I mean, because it seems like people who are experiencers are also prone to sleep paralysis.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the experience of waking up, rolling over, and then experiencing paralysis when I decide I'm going to get up and check out what's going on, and then it feels as though I'm glued to my bed.
Okay.
But I mean, I rolled over first, so I wasn't paralyzed, and
Right.
then so I don't know if that counts, because I assumed that was whatever this phenomenon is doing that.
Yeah, I mean, my sleep paralysis is usually as soon as I lay down. Like, I'm not asleep. Like.
Huh.
I lay down and like I'll feel pressure behind. I'll sense something in the room. I'll feel something, like literally feel the bed sink in behind me, and I can't. Like it takes effort for me to move, and once I move, it stops. And so I had a dream that my dad had hid $10,000 in the house somewhere, and I was looking for it. And it was either that same night or the next night or something. I laid down, immediately went into sleep paralysis. And I'm laying like on my right side. So behind me, the bed dips down, like something heavy is there. It's clicking like an insect. And I'm like, great. I just wanted to go to sleep. And as it kind of like starts, I could feel it like moving over me, and it's very creepy. And I'm like, great. Like, I hate this. And then I'm like, hey, did my dad hide $10,000 in the house somewhere? And the thing just goes dead quiet, and the gruff voice goes, no. And I went, well, then what use are you? And I rolled over, and I'm like, oh my God, that worked. But like whatever it was generating it, was confused by my question.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm going to be all creepy, and then I ask it that, and it's like, wait, what?
What do you make of that?
I don't know. And
Have
then
you had something like that before or since, or was it just that one?
Well, I think one of the last times I had sleep paralysis, I got annoyed, and I managed to reach over, but I was apparently still in the dream. I didn't realize I was still in the dream. Grabbed the thing from behind me, dragged it off the bed, and started dragging it across the floor. And when I looked down, it was this crazy looking clown. And I was like, yeah, of course it's a clown. It's going to be a trickster, of course, And it's like kind of laughing at me, like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, oh, you're really flexible, as I'm like pulling its leg. And I'm like, I could do some really horrible stuff to you. And then it gets this horrible look on its face, and I wake up. And then I didn't have sleep paralysis again for like a year.
You became a nightmare to the nightmare.
Exactly.
That's the way to go, man.
The weirdest dreams I think like I said, I've had a lot of information dreams where they're like dreams, but there's information couched in them.
Uh-huh.
And I've learned how to take that information out and be like, okay, this was information. And sometimes the dream stuff ends up being information too, but in a more symbolic way. And it's usually about people I'm going to meet. So it's not like something I could have picked up subconsciously. It'll be someone I meet like 6 months later or a year later or something like that. And I'll be like, oh, every single thing here matches up. But I had a series of dreams a year or two ago. The first one started where, again, I thought I was awake, and I was laying just like I was laying on the bed. My hand was open to my side, and I felt a little hand in my hand. And I was like, what is that? And I slowly closed my hand around it, and I realized, oh, no, there's really a hand in my hand. And so I started squeezing really hard, and I'm like, what are you? Or I said, who are you? Or something like that, and it said, it's me. And I was like, no. And I squeezed it harder, and I said, who are you? And it, like, with like a strained reaction, said, it's me. And it sounded like a little kid almost, or a girl, like a little girl. Huh. And then I woke up, and my hand was right where it would have been if someone were to put a hand in it. And I was like, okay, that felt real. That did not feel like a dream. That was really weird. And then like maybe a week or so later, it wasn't that much after, I had a dream where, again, I thought I was awake. I got up, I went through the normal process of like waking up, going into the kitchen, and I look into the room just past the kitchen, which used to be a dining room, and I see this thing by the door, and I'm like, the hell is that? And as I'm looking at it, trying to see, because it's a little dark, and I'm trying to squint and see what it is, I realize it looks kind of like a Jawa. It's this small, like 2-foot tall hooded thing. And once it realizes I see it, it takes off and starts running into the studio. So I chase after it, and I chase it around the corners, and I mean, everything feels completely real, and I catch it. And I grab this thing, and I'm holding it, and it feels like muscle. Like, it just feels like solid muscle. And I'm grabbing it around the center part of it, and it's thrashing around trying to get free of me. And I'm going, where's the nearest camera? Where's the nearest camera? And I'm like, the kitchen. So I'm like walking into the one in the kitchen, and I'm holding the thing in front of the camera. And then I'm going, where's the next camera in case that one doesn't work? You know, and I'm like walking around. And as I'm doing this, I start getting really, really tired. And the thing's just massively thrashing around and making weird noises. But I couldn't see what it looked like under the hood and stuff. And then I fell asleep and woke up. And I looked at those and I went, is this thing testing me to see how I'll respond to it? And I'm responding to it by terrorizing it?
Well, that seems to be a theme with you then.
I guess so. I mean, it's just like, not only am I not afraid of it, but I'm going after it. You know, it's like, you're real. I'm going to catch you, you know?
Right. But there's also the frustration that you're not.
Right. Yes. Oh, yeah.
And in real life, do you have caramers in every room of your house? What's going on, Seriah?
I do. I have cameras in almost every room.
What's that about?
So
are you on Big Brother and we don't know it?
It started when I had, when I was living here just by myself. And I had cats, and there would be times where I was gone the whole day, and I wanted to be able to check on the cats. And they're just cheap Wise cams, so they're like $30 a camera. And they also will alert me, like if the fire alarm goes off or anything like that. So they're useful. They're also useful for when I put things down and don't remember where I put them.
Yes. Well, have you had any paranormal stuff show up on the cameras?
Yes. Yeah. We had the most, there's a couple really weird ones. This one's just so weird. So I'm in the far back of the house. I open up a file that's supposed to be a time-lapse file of one of the music shows, and it starts playing in normal speed with audio, which the thing didn't record like that. And I'm like, what is going on here? And then the fire alarm goes off in the front of the house. And I'm like, oh crap. And I go running to the front of the house, and the fire alarm stops. Like, okay. And there was nothing on fire. I checked thoroughly, checked the basement, checked upstairs, nothing. All right. So I go back, I click that file again, and now it's playing the time lapse that should have been there. I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't what I was looking at. And I'm like, but there's no other files. This folder literally has one file in it. And that's what I clicked on, and this wasn't what it was a minute ago. So then I decided I should check the cameras. The studio, which is the room next to where the fire alarm went off, right before the fire alarm goes off, there's this huge rush of what look like orbs that just go swooshing up to the camera. And then the fire alarm goes off, and they just kind of dissipate. And I'm like, what? I've never seen that before on this camera. So, and I was talking to my girlfriend at the time, and she's like, go in there and like beat the couch or something, or the chair, and see what the dust looks like. And I do that, and it looks nothing like what I had. There was no air moving in the house. There was no air conditioning on. There was nothing. So I have no idea what that was, but it was odd.
Yeah, and your girlfriend's okay with all these cameras?
Well, they always, everyone who comes here, I let them know there's cameras in every room, not the bathroom or anything like that. But
is she okay? Can we talk to her now? Where is she?
Ex-girlfriend now, but okay. Yes, she's fine. But that was, I mean, it was a good suggestion to see, maybe a cat jumped on the couch or something and I didn't see it.
I mean, that's the timing is the thing, right?
Yeah. And that weird video file that shouldn't have existed.
Right.
There's another one where I was walking into the house and I hear this loud crash. And I was like, what the hell was that? And it was night. And I'm thinking, well, it could have been the neighbor doing something and it might have just echoed over the building. Whatever. And I come in and I'm doing stuff. And at some point I realized that the candle bookend on my bookshelf is missing and the books have fallen over. And I look down and I see the candle on right next to the floor heater. And I said, oh, well, that would have been the crash because those floor heaters are loud if you hit them. So I pick it up and I put it back and I'm like, why did that fall though? So again, I roll the camera back and visually there's nothing. But when I left the audio on, you hear very loud footsteps that go boom, 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 boom. And then the candle falls and they stop. And I went, and I played it for my roommate, who then tells me at the same time that was happening, she had a weird vision while taking a shower. And it's like, okay, what the hell was that? And I went into that room and then stomped as loud as I could and could not replicate the sound of those footprints. Those footsteps were way louder, nor could I shake that shelf enough to knock the candle off.
What was her vision?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
And is she okay?
Yeah, she's fine.
Okay. She knew about the cameras, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I sent her the footage.
The room where you pull the book off the shelf and then the whole shelf spins around and reveals a room. Did they know about that room?
No.
Oh, you should have told them about that.
Actually, I sent her the video, and she was freaked out by the footprints, and then tried to come up with any explanation to kind of explain it away. I mean, she has a lifetime of experiences too, so she's used to weirdness.
Have you ever had weirdness together like that?
Not really. I mean, there's been things like I took her to the store, and we get back to the house, and she's like, my phone's missing, and she panics, and we were actually about to record the Metallic Onslaught. And one of the guys from the Onslaught goes, there's a thing, you can go on Google and there's a find your phone. Even if the ringer's off, it'll make noise. He's like, because I always lose my phone. So she does that. And like she's on her ex-boyfriend's like cell phone plan. So he's looking at it and he's going, no, it says it's there at the house with you. And we're looking everywhere. And we go out to the car and we can hear the phone faintly. And it's like, okay, it's in the car. It was in the back seat under a cooler where she never went anywhere near. And we're both just like, how?
I seem to remember you telling me that long ago.
There was that one, and another time I took her to the store. She was done, and she's like, I'm waiting by the exit on the bench, and I walk out, and there's nobody on the bench, and I'm like, oh, she must have went to the car. I go to the car, she's not there. I message her, I'm like, where are you? She's like, on the bench by the door, and I'm like, no, just walked by there, and then she walked right out, and I went, the hell?
When you have stuff like, well, especially at the house happen, but does it happen in clusters or is it just random times?
It's usually in clusters. I didn't realize that until I started like paying attention.
And, this is ordinarily, and I'm sure you've gone through, what were you doing at the time? What was going on in your life at the time?
Right. And my life is very liminal to begin with.
Were you working on anything at the time though?
That I don't know off the top of my head. I mean,
because I have found like when I'm writing books, either something comes to me, like I'm to tell you this and I'm telling you it's fiction. That whole quote unquote plot or whatever, the thing that needed to be said at the end there came to me in all at once while I was, out on the gazebo, quote unquote, meditating, just letting the Kundalini do its thing. It just plopped down in my lap. And now as I'm writing, I'm finishing up this book on Kundalini, but I'm talking about ghosts. And as I'm writing about it, suddenly, there's like ghostly activity in the house, but little things. And I feel like that happens around when I'm writing something. It's like the universe responds and says, oh, okay, here you go. Oh, you're interested in this again? Here you go. Do you find that that's what's happening with you?
I actually don't know. I'd have to look because I keep records of everything, like stuff that's going on in normal life as well, specifically because I was told to back when I started keeping records. I was just going to keep a record of magical work and anything paranormal that happened. And in my head, it was very distinctly put that I needed to record everything. And I went, yeah, okay. And now I'm like, oh, now I see why. Because at least for the portion of the book that I've written that goes up to like 96, I mean, the clusters, yes, stuff will cluster together. And a lot of times it's in very liminal points in my life. So that pattern is definitely there. I don't know so much about creative stuff because I'm always doing creative stuff. Like I'm rarely at a point where I'm not either, have a story in my head or like trying to put something creative together.
Have you ever noticed in documentaries, when people make documentaries, there's always at least one part that is like the perfect things that falls into their lap and it looks like it's scripted, but it isn't. It just happened.
Yep.
But it's in every documentary that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Does nobody pay attention to that? Like, that's interesting, right? But nobody calls attention to, like, those people might not think that it's a paranormal thing because it's just luck. Right, but when you look at all the documentaries, this luck seems to be a recurring theme.
Yep. That is definitely. I remember Laird Scranton talking about that when he was writing his book. And I've heard other people say that too when they were writing something, the very thing they needed suddenly like I think with Laird, the very book he needed like fell off the bookshelf at the library in front of him.
Right. Well, there you go. That's pretty blatant.
Exactly. We're gonna have to continue this on a Patreon segment. So tell people where they can find you.
I think last time I said no, but this time I'll say ourundoing.com.
All right. And,
come find me.
And what? And that's links to everything, right?
Yep. You can listen to, it goes into Paratopia, it goes into Our Undoing Radio and all sorts of
and your YouTube
essays and videos and stuff.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me on.
I want to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. I can't do this without you. So thank you for supporting the show. And know that every positive thing that comes out of this show is partially because of you. I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons who are pledging $10 or more a month. Greg Ross, John Blackburn, Madeline J., Marty Garza, Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Marthartha, Midnight Review presents Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Abby Allen, Cherry Trapezoid, Patricia Giaquinta, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Billuminati, Bright Rectangle, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, Corey Nelson, Diane B., MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, Jamie Page, History and Coffee, J. Otto Bullitt, Jack Huntington, James Lindsay, Jim and Sophie, John Mattingly, John Bracken, Jonathan Frost, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Shurek, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linda from Michigan, Linz Jackson K., MJ Armstrong, Mark Shoemaker, Mark Brady, Mark Smith, Paul Jeffries, Perry Peters, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Sasha McHale, Janet's Planet, Strange Stories with the Seeker and Skeptic Podcast, Verosh K., Schmooples, Devourer of Mortal Souls, Stacy Sherwood, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Victoria, Vincent Trewill, Will Cherry, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, Colin Karras, Craig Sagastumi, and Matthew Brown. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. There is, of course, a Patreon segment to go along with this. And again, if you want to become a Patreon, just go to wheredidtheroadgo.com and click on the big Patreon link. It's only $3 a month. It helps us out greatly and gets you a ton of extra content, commercial-free, and a week or two early. And occasionally extra stuff on top of all of that. See you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.